Welcome to this episode of The Wellness Warriors, where we discuss topics that will help you thrive in life by giving you proactive tips you can use to maintain your well-being or guide you from illness toward a state of wellness. I'm your host, Marsha Barona of Synergy Wellness. I help you think well, move well, and feel well for today, tomorrow, and into your future by providing personalized lifestyle plans and wellness consulting, personal training, and nutrition counseling geared specifically to your goals. There are 8 components of wellness, and each episode will focus on a topic that relates to one of them: diurnal, emotional, environmental, social, vocational, spiritual, physical, and intellectual. I enjoy collaborating with like-minded professionals, and getting different points of view is a wise and healthy way to ensure that you get the absolute best information and tools to help you thrive. We all want a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. But some of us struggle to find the balance to make it happen. So each of us must commit to a shift in our thinking, make a commitment to self-love, self-care, and above all, to self-respect. Doing that necessarily requires us to make some lifestyle changes that will result in achieving the life we dream of. I hope today's episode will challenge you, inspire you, and motivate you to shift your thinking. Love yourself enough to make it happen, and you will enjoy quality of life for the rest of your life. Let's get started. I've invited a fellow wellness warrior, Laura Glenney from Journey Well Counseling Services, to join me today. She's a registered psychotherapist and registered marriage and family therapist. Welcome, Laura. What's great in your world today?
Hi, Marcia. Great in my world today. Well, I have been enjoying the sun. I got out on a bike ride with my girls this morning, and we're just trying to keep moving forward and beat the heat, but also get outside and stay active.
That's great. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm a registered psychotherapist, as you mentioned. I do private practice. I've done community mental health. I've done child and youth mental health, but I've recently made the shift into doing private practice full time. I live in the Woodstock area, and my husband and I have 2 girls, 5 and 2, so they keep us very busy. Yeah, we do lots of outdoors things, biking, hiking, all of that kind of stuff. And we do a lot of reading as well. We all like our books. So that's a little bit about me.
Good things to do. So we're going to be talking about something today that impacts every one of us at some point, and most of us on a fairly regular basis: stress. There's a long list of stressors in our day-to-day lives, and there's nothing that will completely negate the stress or make it disappear. So today we want to help our viewers and listeners understand where it comes from, how our systems respond, and how to identify healthy strategies to deal with it that will make their lives easier. Among other components, this affects our emotional wellness, our thoughts and feelings. It affects how well we're able to identify, recognize, and control emotion, to express emotions effectively and appropriately. And this includes the way in which we are grateful, forgive, handle stress, as well as how we experience relaxation. This also includes the internal messages or self-talk and self-thought that we engage in, which include our positive and negative thought patterns, balance of optimism and pessimism, and sense of self, including our body image and self-esteem. So, Laura, what is stress? And can you take us through how you help people understand it and their response to it?
Yeah. So stress is understood as our reaction to things that are going on around us. Oftentimes it is painted in a negative light. It can include physical responses, emotional responses, as well as mental responses. And it is generally a response to a situation that is putting some kind of pressure on us. And it can be a little bit of stress is okay. You know, oh, I've got that deadline coming up. I got to get that report written. To a global pandemic that puts a lot of stress on people. Maybe livelihood is at stake, or the kids are home from school, and those kinds of things, to a point where we feel really overwhelmed and unable to manage. So it can really kind of run that continuum. Um, and in terms of kind of understanding our stress response, I like to put it in perspective of our physical systems, because we really do have a physical response to these things that really drives how we then feel, drives how we react and respond to things, and how well we feel, how well equipped we feel to manage the situation. And so there's a couple of models that I use to give an understanding of why we respond the way we do, in order to support acceptance of our responses. When we can understand where they're coming from and view them in a bit of a different light, it can make them less, not sure what the word is that I want, but it creates a different understanding and a different relationship with our stress response.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, an awareness of our limits and what we need. So the first model that I use is called the window of tolerance. And this comes from a person named Dan Siegel. He's a psychologist down in the States, and he does a lot of work around how our brain interprets things, but also there's another model that kind of goes along with that called polyvagal theory, that looks at our nervous system and how our nervous system responds in these different zones that we find ourselves in. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of a diagram. Marcia, can you see that?
I can. Yeah, that's great.
So we've got that little pink bell curve, and there's a little box near the little star. In that middle section, that's what we call that window of tolerance. And that's the space that we want to stay in. When we get over on the hump of that curve, we are our amygdala is driving the bus. It's a part of our brain that's really responsible for fear and excitement. And so it really instigates some of our nervous system responses to activate our muscles, to decrease our breathing, to increase our heart rate, all of those pieces that really heighten that stress response. And then if we're below that window, that's where we get into our freeze response, where we are maybe frozen, really kind of flat, emotions, really disconnected from the space that we're in. And so this little star up here at the top is what I lovingly refer to as the point of no return. And so it's at that point where you cross that threshold and we go into that space, and that part of our brain, we've been managing, doing the balancing act of emotion, logic. But at that point, our prefrontal cortex, that front part of our brain that's responsible for decision-making and judgment and logic and reason, really kind of goes offline. And we're really being driven by those emotional pieces. The emotion takes over. And so in that space, it's really hard. It's really hard to maintain, the things we need to do. We still have kids at home, or we still have a job to go to, or we still have, right? So we really want to catch ourselves in this little box, build an awareness of what's going on for us in that little box. What are the physical cues? What is my emotional state? What's my mental state? So that I can catch that and figure out what I need to do in order to do something different and not go into that space. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's really interesting. I think people will really be able to identify with that. And I think the diagram will help to make it so much clearer. I want to ask some of our listeners and viewers, think about your limits. Do you recognize the signs that you're headed toward your limit, the point of no return, as Laura explained? Laura, you also mentioned another way during some of our conversations to look at how someone might react to stress that I think others will really relate to. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, for sure. So the other model isn't often well known by its title, but the stress diathesis model really kind of talks to the interaction between our environment and our inherent vulnerability, kind of a predisposition, if you will, to stressors. And so the way I like to position this, I got another little picture for you. Can you see that one?
Yep, that's very clear.
Can you see that one, Marcia?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got two glasses with water in them. And so for someone who has less water in their glass, there's more room for stress and things to accumulate. So they may be able to handle, you know, things keep kind of piling on, and they don't maybe feel as stressed with the same circumstances as someone whose glass, maybe only has this much room left for that to go, for other stressors to be added in. Um, and so when we have that kind of predisposition, it really creates an understanding that I only have this much tolerance, if you will. So back to that window of tolerance piece, right? But when we think of that glass, I have this much space, and where is my glass at right now? Not the glass half full, half empty piece. Where's that stress piece
Right.
in terms of how much can I handle right now? Am I over that limit? What do I need to do to get me back in that limit? And when we understand where our own stress vulnerability is, we can really start to engage with that stress and our responses a little bit differently. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, I hope that our listeners and viewers can identify with what stress is and how you might respond. We're going to give you some helpful strategies you can use to change the way you react. And you'll be amazed at how different it feels to be in control of your reactions. I mean, let's face it, it's hard to think straight, manage your day, and keep your cool when you're overtired, overscheduled, and run down. Your cup is empty. Does that sound familiar? It does to my previous self, or my past self. So I teach clients to take a proactive approach by asking them to take a look at their lifestyle habits and encourage them to establish a nourishing self-care routine to help deal with the day-to-day pressures. Does that mean wine and pedicures? Although those things may be included in your calendar, they are not in and of themselves examples of self-care. In this case, it means including in your daily and weekly routine things that will fill your cup, things that fuel and energize you. Some examples of that might be physical activity, adequate sleep, hydration, good nutrition, relaxation, and of course, some opportunities for fun and joy, engaging social relationships, spirituality, and so on. There are so many things that you can do to make sure that you are really filling yourself up. If you can accomplish that, you will set yourself up for success in so many ways, especially when it comes to dealing with stress. On top of that, change your attitude. Be open, be flexible and adaptable, and be accepting of challenges. One thing that people don't often think of is having a plan to overcome roadblocks. Know who your supports are. Who can you ask for help? And above all, focus on the love and respect you have for the person you're in conflict with or who is the cause of the stress at that moment. And that may also help you to adjust your response. Laura, what are some of the strategies that you teach clients? They may be different from mine.
Yeah. So I really appreciate what you've put out there, Marcia. Some of those thinking things, the mindset pieces, as well as some of those social pieces, and being proactive. A lot of the things that I do are really kind of managing the stress response, but once you incorporate them into your routine, can be also be proactive. So I appreciate that. That doing things ahead of time. So some of those strategies that I use, a big one is mindfulness, that moment by moment awareness of what's going on, using breathing techniques, and there's a few different ones that you can use with that. And then engaging our senses as well. We have 5 senses, and that's how we get our information. And so how we engage with those differently can really help bring that nervous system down when we talked about that point of no return, wanting to, bring ourselves back into that window of tolerance. And so those are the three areas that I really focus on with clients. The key is really about building skills that are transferable. How do we have a set of skills? So including the things that you've talked about, Marcia, including the things that I've talked about, really tailoring it to what works for you, but works for you in multiple situations. If I'm feeling angry about something, I might need something different than if I'm feeling disappointed. But being able to use these things when I'm angry, whether I'm angry at my neighbor, or I'm angry at the hydro bill, or I'm angry at whatever the case may be, you can use these different things between situations instead of looking at each particular stressor individually. And so then, in order to do some of that assessment, asking yourself questions. What is the stressor that's impacting me right now? Can it be reduced? If so, how? What are some of the emotions that are coming up for me? Labeling them, acknowledging them. And then what are some of the physical symptoms that I'm experiencing? And what are the strategies that I need to access to help reduce this stress response and feel calmer? It's not going to get rid of whatever it is that's causing the stress. It's going to put you in a better space to be able to keep moving forward and go about your daily business, whatever that looks like. And one of the things that I really stress with clients is practice, doing it repeatedly. Sometimes we'll talk about habits. When we form habits, whether it's with doing physical exercise, whether it's with doing breathing on a regular basis, we're building neural networks. So pathways in our brain that carry that information, and they get strengthened the more that you use them. So the more frequently you do something, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to recall it very quickly. I don't know about you, Marcia. I know for myself and most of the folks that I talk to, we are terrible learners when we're upset, right? When we're angry or stressed or overwhelmed, it's hard to learn something new, but it's also really hard to recall something that we don't have a lot of experience with. So if I'm not practicing breathing, if I'm not practicing meditation, if I'm not practicing mindset or reaching out to those social networks, then I'm not as likely to access that strategy when I'm upset. We need to do it when we're calm so that our brain associates it with being calm. And then it's more likely, the more we do it, to build that really strong neural network instead of this wiggly map that it's going to take the very first time you do it. Does that make sense?
It does. That is so true. And practice makes perfect. I know that we say it 100 times in our in our lives, but it is so true. And I know that these strategies are going to help people build confidence when they're dealing with stress as they learn new ways to deal with things.
For sure.
So to all of you watching and listening, now Laura and I are curious to know, what are some of the strategies that you already use? What strategies would you be willing to try that might be new for you? I'm going to encourage you to share your coping strategies for stress in the comments below. We're going to keep a running list, and then we will post them in a future episode. And they'll probably end up on both of our websites somewhere at some point as well. One last thought before we close. Remember that anything new takes time. So be sure to try a new strategy a few times before deciding that it doesn't work and moving on to something else. Give it a chance, and really try to commit yourself to doing it a few times, and let yourself make mistakes, let yourself stumble, because in that process you're also teaching yourself that new habit. So don't lose faith right away. Laura, I want to thank you so much for being with me today and sharing a wonderfully insightful conversation.
Thanks, Marcia. I really appreciated, building this conversation with you. I really appreciate being able to share information with people. None of it's proprietary for me. I love being able to share that and connecting with other professionals, and especially at a time when things are quite stressful for people. And if we can help them to build build new strategies, build new understanding of their responses, the difference that that can make for people is really huge. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you, Marcia. Thanks again.
It's been wonderful. So for our listeners and viewers out there, you can connect with both Laura and I on Facebook. For myself, Marcia Barona at Synergy Wellness Pro, and for Laura, it's at Journey Well Counseling Services. And you can find our other contact information in the comments below. Sincere thanks to you for watching and listening. It is truly my hope that you learned something today that will positively impact your life and your health. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any episodes. And if you have any suggestions on future topics, I'd be happy to hear from you. So until next time, enjoy your day and be well.